All right, I'd like to call our meeting to order and welcome everyone to our meeting this evening, our council members, administration, and as well as those who are streaming from the comforts of home. Welcome to our meeting. First order of business is that I'm going to report out a closed session meeting that was held earlier this evening at 6:15 p.m. in accordance with section 239(2) B and D of the Municipal Act 2001. And at the meeting, the council provided direction to administration on labor negotiations, as well as receive an update on personnel matters concerning identifiable individuals. So I would ask right now for a moment of silence. And again, keep in mind, as well as our friends in Ukraine are under, heavy bombardment, and so let's keep them in our thoughts, and wish our Ukrainian brothers and sisters, to be safe. Okay, I'll ask us to please rise for the national anthem.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north, strong and free. From far and wide, oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
All right, members, we're going to acknowledge our land acknowledgement. This evening, we acknowledge that we are in the lands and surrounded by water originally inhabited by Indigenous peoples who have traveled this area since time immemorial. This territory is within the lands honored by the wampum treaties, agreements between the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Lenni, Lenape, and allied nations to peacefully share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. Specifically, we would like to acknowledge the presence of the Three Fires Confederacy, the Ojibwe, Ottawa, and Potawatomi, and Huron-Wendat peoples. We are dedicated to honoring the Indigenous history and culture while remaining committed to moving towards respectfully with all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. To the members, any disclosure or pecuniary interest on the agenda is presented to you this evening. Hearing none, we'll have that reflected in our minutes. And speaking of minutes, the regular council meeting of September 11, 2022, there's a recommendation that the September 27, 2022 minutes of the regular council meeting, as were duplicated and delivered to the members, be adopted. Councillor Houston moves, Councillor Jobin support. On those minutes, any errors or omissions? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. We have a supplementary agenda adoption requirement. The items to this regular meeting agenda regarding report FS 2022-08 budget variance report, the June 2022 be approved. Deputy Mayor Bichetti moves, Councillor Houston support. On the motion, all in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. We have no delegations this evening, so we'll move right to communications. Members of council, we have communications with the City of Windsor, as well as that's it, the only communications, and looking for a motion to receive. Councillor Jobin, Councillor Altenhoff. On the motion, any questions? Not, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried. We have no action required on communication, so we'll move right into committee minutes. First is the Police Services Board, September 8, 2022. Our recommendation that the September 8, 2022 minutes of the Police Services Board, as were duplicated and delivered to the members, be accepted. Deputy Mayor Bichetti and Councillor Petrie. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Next, we'll move to the town the business, Tecumseh Business Improvement Area minutes of August 17th, 2022. And the recommendation is that those minutes be accepted. Moved by Councillor Job and Councillor Houston. Support. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Next, the Rural Broadband Advisory Committee recommendation that the March 9th, 2022 minutes of the Rural Broadband Advisory Committee, as were duplicated and delivered to the members, be accepted. Councillor Jobin and Councillor Houston. Any questions or comments? Hearing none. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Move on to the quarter revision, September 27, 2022. That's the South Talbot and 12th line drain. A recommendation that the quarter revisions, as were duplicated and delivered by the members, be adopted. Councillor Tonio? Okay, and Councillor Petrie. On the motion. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Move on to reports, members of council. First, reports from our Chief Administrative Officer and People and Culture. And so I'll call upon this, the CAO on the Tecumseh 100th anniversary celebration report out.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to report out this evening on the 100th anniversary celebration. I think it was a resounding success with three days of celebratory events from one side of town to the other. And we wanted to report out on the financials. And actually, if I could get you to scroll to the financials, that would be, there we go. Thank you. So we did fare better in the grant area than we had originally expected by about $10,000 over the original grant forecast. That was through being able to access, we did have a shortfall in one of the grants. It was $29,500, the Canada Heritage Grant. We had expected quite a bit more than that, about $40,000 more than that. So we had some making up to do. So we were successful in making up the difference and then some. And that included also being able to split one of the newer grants with the Tecumseh BIA on a 50-50 basis in order to facilitate their downtown murals as well. So in addition, we were more successful in gaining sponsorships for the events than we had originally anticipated by about $30,000 to the good. And we were also successful in containing costs where total funding was about $42,000 less, or sorry, total expenses was about $42,000 less than what we had budgeted. So all told, this means that we do not have to dig into the town's reserves for as much as we had originally budgeted for. And I believe there's a combined savings of about $82,000, reducing the original commitment of $156,000 from reserves to $76,000. So a good news story all around. The event was successful, and we came in a better financial position than originally forecast. So Happy to present this to you this evening and ask that the report be received, please.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Evans. And before I ask for a motion, and then I want to certainly take this opportunity to thank yourself and administration, council, and Councilor Tonio for being part of the committee, and to the committee itself. I think it was just a marvelous four-day weekend. We couldn't have asked for anything better. And to the directors that are here too, please extend council's thanks to all of the staff that came out that weekend, and they contributed to the success of this whole event. And it was a beautiful 4 days that showcased our community, how welcoming it was. And I know, speaking with members of council on it, had received nothing but accolades in terms of all of the events that were there, and also some pretty touching moments with our Indigenous population, especially our guests that were here. Were very touched at the reception that they receive on an ongoing basis for 4 days by our citizens, and they were extremely appreciative of being part of this great weekend. So kudos to everybody, and it's much nicer too when you come in way under budget, and so thank you for that. And I think we've got one more event that we have to deal with on, I believe it'll be November the 12th, the unveiling of the memorial at the fire station number 1. And that will be the total conclusion of our 100th anniversary. So looking forward to that. So thank you to everyone that did their part on that. So with that, a motion to receive the report, Councillor Petrie and Councillor Jobin. On the motion, all in favor, opposed, that is carried. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to the item number 2 on the agenda, 2A, which is financial incentive program grant application, Tecumseh Road Main Street Community Improvement Plan at 1071 L'Esperance Road, also known as 1797565 Ontario Limited Home Instead Parking Area Improvement Grant. And I'll call upon our director, Mr. Hillman, to bring that report forward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening to council. This is an application that actually, if we just move to attachment 1A with the report, this is an application under the Tecumseh Road Main Street Community Improvement Plan, which was a plan adopted by council a number of years ago under the Planning Act, and it allows council the opportunity to provide grants for a redevelopment of properties. We've had a number of those come forward to council over the last number of years. This evening, it's with respect to 1071 L'Esperance Road. So the image on the map, you'll see the community improvement plan area itself, where grants are available to property owners, is exclusively within the area outlined in red. Tecumseh Road just cuts across the middle of the map, and it goes over to the municipal boundary on the left side, and Tecumseh Road, where it crosses CP rail on the right side of the image. The property in question is just north of the tracks. It's the little yellow square property that has a commercial use on the main floor and 2 residential units up above. So if we go to the next image, please, attachment 1B, it just shows the property outlined in red and the parking area out front outlined in yellow across from St. Denis Street, just on the west side of L'Esperance Road. The application before council, this property has had a number of other applications that the report summarizes for community improvement plan grants. The property has been improved over the last number of years, and we're quite pleased to see that they are looking to access additional funds. This application this evening is seeking $10,000 for a parking lot improvement. Includes removal of the old asphalt, repaving, delineation of parking spaces, new parking bumpers, and replacement of existing catch basin on the property. Again, this is only available because the property is within the identified approved CIP area. 2 quotes have been received, which is a requirement of the CIP. It has been reviewed against the community improvement plan. It does meet the requirements. The next steps of council so chooses to approve is that the owner would has 6 months to commence the project, a year to complete the project. And then it's inspected and the funds are released at that time if the work is complete in accordance with the proposal. Ultimately, Mr. Mayor, the recommendation is that the grant application for Tecumseh Road Main Street Community Improvement Plan for the property at 1071 Les Bronze Road be deemed eligible and approved for the parking area improvement grant program in the amount of $10,000 in relation to the parking lot improvements or proposed for the subject property, all of which is in accordance with section 11.3, subparagraph 5 of the CIP and with the report that is in front of council. Happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you very much. Any questions or comments? Yeah, go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a question, Brian, with regards with timelines, it talks about 6 months. And as you know, we've had issues with asphalt and contractors, even with our Riverside Trail. And we're going into the winter months now. Is there any way we can maybe look at it doing 12 months, extending it? Because I don't know if that's going to cause an issue for them from start to finish. 6 months may be kind of close. So I'm looking at the timelines with that, with the reality that we're all facing in our region.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, good question. So to be clear, what the CIP sets up is you have 6 months to start the project from council approval. So from this evening. So that means you need to start the project sometime in the spring, and then you have a year to complete from the time of the approval. So it puts us at next October. We have run into this before, and there is the ability under the plan for us to allow extensions. So we evaluate them. It's only happened a couple of times on some complex projects. So I think it will work under this one, but certainly if that circumstance arises, we work with the property owner to offer the necessary extensions.
Very good. Thank you.
All right, any further questions or comments? And motion then to see Councilor Tonio, Councilor Altenhoff. On the motion, all in favor, opposed, that is carried. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to item 2B. It's the consent agreement for 6780 Holden Road. That's municipal drain access culvert. And again, I'm going to ask for our Director Hillman to bring the report forward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And if we go to attachment number 1 to the report, just to get a frame of reference quickly, the location of the property is at 6780 Holden Road. It was the subject of a severance. You'll see it outlined in red just north of County Road 8. And then if we go to attachment 2, these lands, the entirety of the farm parcel is outlined in green on the next attachment. The property that was severed for a surplus dwelling is outlined in red. One of the conditions of severance was in accordance with the Planning Act that the green area be rezoned to not allow a home to be constructed in the future. That has gone through council. It's been approved. One of the other conditions is that they have a culvert installed so you can ensure access to the green land. That is a difficult condition to fulfill. We've had similar arrangements in the past. So one of the options is that an agreement is signed that's registered on title. The agreement basically says that these lands are subject to a drainage report, which has been initiated, but because a consent has to be completed within a specified period of time under the Planning Act, which in this case is March of 2023, that condition may likely not be able to be fulfilled because of the time taken to complete the drainage report and so on. So the option is an agreement is executed between the town and therefore the request to have council's endorsement and authorization to execute and the landowner that's registered on title that basically sets out if you were to purchase that land, you understand there's an obligation already in place that allows the drainage report to continue and the works ultimately to be constructed at the cost of the property owner, whoever that might be in the future. So, Mr. Mayor, this evening, the recommendation is to have a bylaw passed authorizing the mayor and the clerk to execute the consent agreement between the town and Ralph Mayo and Gina Mayo with facilities, which facilitates the future construction of an access culvert for a municipal drain on the property at 6780 Holden Road in order to satisfy condition number 7 of the consent application B0122. Satisfactory and form to the town solicitor, and that bylaw be adopted. And further, that execution of such further documents as are called for by the consent agreement, including the execution of the acknowledgement and direction required to register the consent agreement on title to the lands, and such other acknowledgement and directions for any related transfers or real property registrations contemplated by the consent agreement by the mayor and clerk be authorized. And happy to answer any questions, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Hillman. Any questions or comments on the report as presented? Motion on the report, Councilor Houston, Councilor Petrie. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. All right, we'll move to item 3, financial services and budget variance report as of June of 2022. Mr. Kitsos will bring that variance report forward.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. So tonight we have financial services report FS 2022-08, which is our budget variance report for June or Q2. This report recommends that a projected surplus tax supported of 287,000 and a rate supported deficit of 52,000 be received. So this is the first of 3 annual budget variance exercises that are performed by administration. So we have Q2 variance, August variance, and year end. As a refresher, department directors and managers will review year-to-date activity against budget and prepare projections to year end. Departments review both operating and life cycle or capital budgets. As referenced in the report, the 2022 budget was prepared assuming that municipal programs and services would return to pre-pandemic levels and that any direct COVID-19 impact on financial operations would be identified through the variance exercise. And that was pretty much across the board, with one exception. We did allow for reduced lottery licensing revenues, and that was to be offset by transfer from reserves. So that's basically a little refresher on the process itself and what went into the 2022 budget. With respect to the report, we have made some changes to the report, so I'm going to just speak to those to start. So about a year or 2 ago, we did separate our detail listing into an attachment. So that is attachment 2. So we continue to do that. And the main body of the report focuses on the few primary variance items. We did make a couple other changes to this report. So specifically, so if we go, so if you go to the main body of the report, and on the, so right there, you'll see, so we list the main drivers in bullet format on the first 2 pages. So that had been in table format previously. If you scroll down 2 more pages, Sue, you'll see that we have a waterfall chart here. So this allows the reader to quickly identify departments or divisions that are experiencing the greatest variances. Positive figures depicted in blue are favorable, negative in orange are unfavorable. And on the next page, we have introduced the summary financial schedule. So that expresses the variance by revenue or expenditure type on a corporate-wide basis. So this presents the projected variance in a financial statement format that allows a reader to quickly identify types of revenue or expenditures that are experiencing variances. So that's just with the format of the report. So with respect to 2022 projections, as mentioned, we are projecting to be quite close to budget this year. So for tax supported, we're projecting a surplus of around $287,000. And for rate supported, which is water and wastewater, we're projecting a rate supported deficit of $52,000. So some of those major drivers, so we're expecting a favorable variance with respect to grant revenue of roughly $350,000. This is in part due to $145,000 of COVID-19 relief funding for municipalities that was allocated to the town last year that we did not recognize last year. We deferred until this year. And I'll detail how that's going to be used later. We have summer student grants we're projecting to be $40,000 greater than budget. There's the 100th anniversary, as our CEO had mentioned earlier, had grant revenues about $10,000 greater than budgeted. And we have several MMP or municipal modernization programs that have grant funding that was awarded last year, where the programs carry into 2022. So we have those revenues recognized in 2022. With respect to other revenues, so in user fees, permits, and charges, we were looking at an unfavorable variance of $385,000. So a large portion of this is due to the effects of COVID early in the year. So we are expecting about a $40,000 shortfall in addition to what was previously budgeted for lottery licensing. So we had budgeted an $85,000 shortfall, so $125,000 in all. Arena rentals are projecting about $65,000 lower than budget, and POA fines are projecting close to $70,000 below budget. And with respect to building permits, there were a couple of major developments that we had anticipated to commence during 2022 that are now expected to proceed in early 2023. So that really just pushes about $225,000 worth of building permit fees into the next year. On the expenditure side, there aren't really a whole lot of items that are standing out. Fuel obviously is one. I think everyone is expecting that. So we're looking on a corporate-wide side of about a $70,000 unfavorable variance. And we show also another item as net transfer to and from reserves. So although this looks like an expenditure, this ultimately is our excess bank interest revenue that is being transferred to reserves. So it does show as an expense, but it's actually a good story. It's additional revenue that we're earning, but we do not use that additional revenue towards our operations. We transfer that into our reserves. So then if we, Sue, if I can ask you just to go back to that waterfall. Oh, actually, that's okay. Actually, you can stay right here. So with respect now on a department basis, we do on the waterfall chart, there were basically two departments or divisions that stand out. So there's the administration that projects a surplus of roughly, or favorable variance of roughly $385,000. Primary items there are property taxation revenue. So that's going to be $145,000 greater than budget. And that is tied to in-year assessment growth exceeding our estimates. So 2021 assessment growth exceeded what we had projected it would be. We did get a one-time WSIB surplus rebate of $72,000. Professional fees, legal and other, are trending $60,000 below budget. Staffing vacancies, primarily in finance and clerks, are projecting a favorable variance of $200,000. And those are partly offset by a roughly $70,000 unfavorable variance in corporate-wide health benefits and $80,000 unfavorable variance in supplemental tax revenue. And that's again to assessment growth coming on a little slower than we had anticipated. So that summarizes those are the main items in the administration favorable variance of $385,000. The other one that stands out is the building department, so showing an unfavorable variance. So we had mentioned earlier that building permit fees are projecting to be lower. And that is just to a couple of major developments starting a little later than anticipated. And wages and benefits showing an unfavorable variance, and that's due to temporary staffing to address several multi-unit residential structures that were permitted during 2021. For rate supported, as mentioned, we're projecting an unfavorable variance of $52,000. So on the water side, the water is projecting a favorable variance primarily due to temporary staffing vacancies that will amount to a favorable variance of close to $170,000. And that is offset somewhat by unfavorable cost of our bulk water purchase of around $33,000. So we of course purchased that through the city of Windsor, and that rate increases by CPI annually. At the time of budget, the CPI rates weren't final. We had anticipated about a 4% increase, and CPI came in a little over 5%. And with respect to wastewater, the primary driver here is the sanitary treatment costs. Again, so that service is provided by the City of Windsor. That rate is determined by the city. We usually get the rate around April of the current year, and it's based on their actual costs of operation per volume. So that rate does go up and down depending on the volumes of wastewater that they do treat. So we do find in dry years, the rates will jump a little higher. And so that's what we experienced. That's what we're going to experience this year. Then with respect to capital, so we do list, we have attachments 3 and 4 to the report that list all the active projects that the town has been working on so far this year. So at a high level, we have over 120 projects right now that are currently active that have budgeted costs of roughly $38 million. And those are, as mentioned, so all those are detailed in attachments 3 and 4 with their budgets, approved budgets, and current expenditures and projected expenditures with a comment provided by departments on the status of those projects. So if there are any questions, I'd be happy to take those now.
I've got a couple. When you talk about capital and that 120 projects, that's significant in itself. Do we expect any carryover into next year? Are we behind on some? I know we've had some issues with obviously getting contractors to put bids and so forth. Do you see a lot of transition to 2023 or some of these projects?
That's a fair comment. And yeah, and we have experienced some delays. So we have had some difficulties with tenders. We've had to re-tender some projects a couple of times. And that has delayed some starts. So I think the Riverside Drive Trail is one, although that is expected to be completed this year. I think the big project that stands out is our storm pump stations. Although we're not going to spend this year what we had anticipated, it's still going. The project is still it's a long-term project that's is to be completed by the end of 2027. So they're still on target. We're still on target to finish that project, but we have started later on the construction part. A lot of that has to do with just the complexity, I think, of the tendering documents. So I know finance has been working closely with Public Works. I know that there's a lot that's going into those tender documents, and it is a lot more complex, especially with what we're experiencing is the supply chain issues or matters. So the tenders are having to go out in pieces to get pieces of equipment sooner than construction. So we will see some deferred expenditures from this year into next year.
Yeah, and just to follow up on that, maybe it's not fair to you, Mr. Kitsos, maybe it's more for Public Works, but some of the concerns that I have too is in terms of a lot of the big projects that are right in front of us. And a lot of it is from the plans that we've kind of asked administration to lay out, and in particular Hamlet development and Banwell corridor, as well as what's happening in the Sylvester lands, the Murph, all of that in those terms is that with delays in these projects here, how much deferral, that's what I'm worried is overloading 23, and the demand is going to be even higher in terms of supporting, obviously, with LG being built. That's going gangbusters right now, as we can see, and other opportunities in that. So when we're going to be doing the 23 budget is, you've got 120 projects right now. We're into October, and a lot of them were delayed. And that's my concern is moving forward is how do we maintain momentum without pushing even, the pump house project. I know those are grants supported and there's timelines and deadlines to be met. But I feel fairly confident 27 is 4 years into the future, but every year that you lose and so forth, what does that mean in terms of costs and deferrals deferrals. So I'm a little, little concerned, but I mean, obviously, time will tell if we can meet all of those challenges, because we know construction companies, skill help, the huge demands, the bridge, the hospital is going to start. There's going to be a big pull on a lot of contractors, and that could defer a lot of our future plans. Mr. Bartnick.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for the question. It's very timely because I've been taking quite a good thorough look at next year's capital works plan over the last couple of weeks. So when it comes to deferral of some of these projects, the larger project I think Mr. Kitsos alluded to was the Les Bronze Via rail improvement project. So we did tender that out. We received one bid, which was significantly over budget. And so the plan was to defer construction until next year. We are planning on tendering that out within the next week and a half, and we'll report back to council in December. So we're hopeful to get a competitive bid from multiple contractors. There are a number of studies, ongoing studies, larger studies that have been ongoing for the last number of years. So the shoreline management plan is one, which we hope to bring that to council in Q1 of next year, as well as the sanitary model that we and the sanitary model update and reporting, and so that report will provide recommendations on how to improve the level of service, not only in dry weather, but also in wet weather. And we hope to bring that forward in Q1 of next year as well. So as council would recall, in May, we did bring forward a kind of a 10-year capital prioritization plan. As part of that plan, we also identified staffing resources that would be required to implement that plan. And we have gone out for advertising, and we are hopeful that we'll have a candidate in place within the next month, so we can hit the ground running for next year. We do recognize that the landscape has changed. We used to get some competitive bids tendering out in January and February. And now I think the strategy is trying to get it out in the fall of the year before. And we're starting to see that with a number of municipalities around here. So I think what you'll see as part of our 5-year capital plan coming forward is requests for full funding on construction projects for 2024. And that will give us the opportunity to tender in October and November of the prior year, enter into those agreements and get those contractors locked up. So we are trying to take some steps to not only think strategically and get a good price, but also try to ensure that there's no further delays, kind of like not a ripple effect for future projects in 23, 24, and 25.
Well, that's excellent. I mean, it makes me feel a lot better, because those were my concerns, because of what has transpired, with delays, not but through our fault, but certainly the difficulties getting the contractors to come forward. Number one, really high tender costs coming forward. And I'm a firm believer that the early bird gets the worm. And I like the idea of we've laid out the groundwork, what needs to be done. So if we're planning and budgeting for multi-years and so forth, then we should be able to start dealing with a lot of these projects, in a timely fashion where we're out of the gate first. And hopefully the other municipalities don't catch on quickly for that. But I think that's important for council, and when we're deliberating on the 23 budget and that we really start looking at 24 and beyond, and tagline a lot of the projects like the pumping station, so forth. We know we're into 4 years down the road, in those projects, but we've got aggressive timelines and very aggressive projects, and looking at the Via Rail piece, I think is critical that we get started there, because all the inquiries we're getting right now on Tecumseh Road, it's more of a refresher for our residents to understand that this plan of the streetscaping and that work is not something we thought about, you know, in the last couple of weeks. This is something that's been on the books for 8 years and through a lot of involvement. So I think we need to get, once the momentum starts, we want to make sure that it keeps moving forward. I think that's an important piece. So thank you for that. The other ones, it's kind of a maybe somewhat, but COVID recovery funds. I know there were funds that were given out last year, and whatever wasn't being utilized, it was, you know, we put it in reserves. We can see the reflection in terms of certainly moving forward. Concern moving forward is there any indication, or I'm leaning on administration, if you had your contacts or anything like that. I know through the health unit, for example, there's going to be funding to carry us into 2022 and 23, because COVID's still here. It's not going away, and we know there's an upsurge coming and so forth. So that leads into the other point is we're finally starting to see our facilities filling up, arenas, all of that, the ice and so forth. And if we lose all that momentum, you know, is there going to be dollars to be able to fulfill that? So we're between a rock and a hard place, I think. I don't necessarily need an answer tonight, because that one you'd need a crystal ball to figure out. But that's another concern moving forward, is what the impact's going to be, if there is one. I'm hoping there isn't. I doubt very much that the province is going to come up and say, oh, we're going to shut everybody down. But there could be some, you know, some slowing, and in particular for large gatherings and so forth. I'm hoping I'm dead wrong on this, but I'm being realist, you know, in terms of what's happening right now in that regard. So I would hope that even at your conference coming up, that you have some dialogue with, if there's ministry people there, if there's anything that they feel it could be coming down the pipe. Not to I don't think we can take another hit with the dollars that we do have. I don't think it would be enough to carry us if we have to, you know, reduce the amount of facility use again.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we'll certainly keep our ear to the ground. We have not heard of any projected closures or restrictions similar to those that we've experienced over the last couple of years. And the corollary to that is we haven't also heard that there's going to be any support, additional support available. But if there is, we certainly will report back.
And finally, this one here is something I usually ask about this time of the year too, is how are we tracking on tax arrears in the municipality? Is it up? Is it down? Is it maintaining? Because obviously we know the inflation rate has gone up quite high, and it's been, you know, a lot of our lower income members in the community have probably hit really hard. So I'm curious to see where we're trending.
Okay, so we did report out mid-year on tax receivables. So we saw that they were slightly higher than previous year, but not really a great deal. So tax receivables are stable. I would say they have been downtrending for several years, and we're at a very low level, really, actually, as compared to our historical rates, say over the last 10 to 15 years. You know, the signs are good there, in that the property owners are able to meet their obligations, at least consistently as with the past 2 years.
Okay, that's it for me. Any further questions or comments? Yes, go ahead, Councilor Houston.
Well, thank you, Worship, and through you to Tom, just regarding the contract services and the larger unfavorable amount on wastewater. You had mentioned we budgeted for about 4, it came in at 5. Do we anticipate that to increase over the next year as inflation is as high as it is now?
Through the mayor to Councillor Houston. So the one that's linked to CPI is water. So that's our bulk water purchase agreement with the city. So that will increase annually by the consumer price index at year end. So, you know, all indications right now are that we're probably going to see something again along 5%, I would think. I know it had peaked around 8. I think there's signs that it's slowing. So I think it's probably fair to say that we can probably expect something around 5%. With wastewater, that's a little different. That's based not so much inflation, that's really on the volumes that they treat and their actual operating costs. And so what we do find is that there is it's based on all the water that the city treats. So that's not just coming from us. Obviously, it's from the city. It is affected, the volumes are affected by a great deal by the amount of precipitation, as there still is a lot of inflow and infiltration in the systems. So what we do find in years where there's not a lot of rain or infiltration, they do not treat a lot of volume. And so their operating cost per volume goes up. So, we know what our volumes are likely going to be, and the rates typically will range plus or minus 3 to 4%. So this was an unusual year where we did see a rather large spike, but often we'll see actually decreases. So that one's hard to predict. It has been a dry year.
All right, any further questions or comments? Then a motion to receive the report. Councillor Tonio, Councillor Altenhoff, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. Thank you. Technology and client services, bring your own device policy.
This report's a little lighter than the
I'm glad
previous
it's
report.
a D and it's not a B.
And no dollars attached to this one, so possibly some savings. Thank you, Your Worship, and good evening, members of council. So this policy has been one that's been requested over the years, and it really kind of bubbled to the surface during the pandemic with the use of technology, remote work, a remote workforce, and that type of thing. So we took another look at it this summer, and the effects are, reducing the security issues or the risks that are involved with somebody carrying their own device with town information or apps on them. So bring your own device, or BYOD, is a policy that facilitates that request across the organization. Like I said, the most common request is email access to town emails on a personal device. And alternatively, it's folks that are carrying a personal device and a town issued device. They only rather carry one or the other. So this will aim or have regard to that and aim to facilitate that process. So just briefly, some highlights from the policy itself. It applies to all employees and elected officials, as the case may be, to use their town-owned device for town-related business. So to start the process, there's a request in writing that comes to administration, and it goes through the Technology and Client Services Department for review. And the devices we're talking about here are just smartphones or tablets, not laptops or PCs, because that really elevates the security risk when we start going down that road. So we're just limiting it to the smartphone and tablet devices. So when you get into some of the requirements, once that's approved, there's requirements and some security that would be put on the device. There's an MDM that would be put on the device. MDM means mobile device management. So it's software that we would install on behalf of the town on this device to help track some of these security issues and ensure that our security measures are enforced on that particular device. For example, if the device is lost or stolen, we have the ability to lock it and or wipe it remotely. Obviously, if there's sensitive data on it, that belongs to the town. We don't want that getting into the wrong hands. So those types of things would be controlled through this MDM. Compensation and costs at this time, which is pretty much the norm with other policies in municipalities or in the business sector in general, is that the compensation and cost is strictly borne by the individual. They're paying their own airtime and data charges, et cetera, on their devices they normally would. We're not going to get into reimbursement or replacement of those devices. They're still owned by the employee, which is offset by the convenience of them only having to carry the one device. The support side of it, our department will provide support to the extent we can relative to this initiative, but not getting into any other, troubleshooting on the device itself that we would normally provide for town issued devices. And then offboarding, when the employee leaves the organization or the corporation, then there's a section there about the offboarding procedure at the end of that. So with that comes, that's the policy itself. And there's the agreement that is filled out by the applicant and approved by administration and by our department. So tonight we're just asking council to receive this report and to also adopt the BYOD policy number 115 for the town.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Firth. Any questions or comments? Then go ahead, Councillor Altenhoff.
Thank you, Worship. And through you to Mr. Firth, thank you very much for bringing this forward. Just out of curiosity, based upon kind of what I've experienced over the past year or so, would there be any impact by implementing this policy to kind of our insurance rates? I mean, would there be any impact there? As a result of, I hope you can see why, maybe security, and I'm just wondering if insurance is going to be impacted in any which way, and if so, I mean, is it a big thing? Is it a minor thing? I don't think it would be that big, but any opinion or any comments on that? I'm just kind of curious because a lot of these small things are now starting to become very big things, as we've seen something hit pretty close to home, and just want to make sure that. And also, I guess another point on this, that perhaps this policy is reviewed quite frequently because technology will be changing incredibly. Who knows, 2 years from now, AI may be doing something incredible. And so I'm just trying to look at it from the point of view of a bit of a security and kind of the impact maybe to insurance on that. Thank you.
Thank you through your worship to Councillor Altenhoff. Excellent points. And you're right, technology has changed since this meeting started tonight. You're absolutely right. And it's an ongoing challenge to keep up with all of that. Coincidentally, this afternoon, senior administration attended a 2-hour workshop on business continuity and disaster recovery. And one of the topics was cybersecurity, and specifically the challenges that municipalities are facing with respect to insurance in the realm of cybersecurity. Years ago, when we renew our policy, there was a few boxes to tick. Now it's multiple pages, and that's a good point, and it's something we should be cognizant of with this report going forward. And if it ever impacted us being able to renew that policy, obviously we'd have to address that at that time. And and additionally, your point on keeping this up to date, is something we're gonna have to keep an eye on as well. I appreciate that.
All right, thank you. Any further questions or comments on the motion? Oh, I don't think I had. I need somebody to move the report. Councillor Altenhoff and Councillor Petrie on the motion. All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. All right, Madam Clerk, we've got bylaws.
Thank you, Your Worship, and good evening, members of council. We have 5 bylaws that require readings this evening. The first bylaw is bylaw number 75, which is a bylaw, an alley closing bylaw for 374 and 382 Berry Avenue and 12748 Little River Boulevard. The second bylaw is bylaw number 76, which is the consent agreement of 6780 Holden, which was discussed earlier this evening. And then we have 3 bylaws, bylaw number 77, 78, and 79, which is in relation to the additional residential units, which was discussed earlier this fall. I'm respectfully asking first and second readings, and if appropriate, third and final.
All right, thank you, Madam Clerk. Moved by Councillor Job in 2 readings, supported Councillor Tonio. Any questions or comments on the bylaws? All in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Third readings in order. Councillor Houston, Councillor Altenhoff. All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Any unfinished business? Hearing none. Any new business? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a shout out to our fire chief, Mr. Bondi and his crew there. We've received a lot of positive reports on the fire prevention and the work that your crew did this past week and the things that you're going to be doing in the future. So keep up the good work. And it's, post-COVID, it was nice to see, large crowds and busy things. So just extend gratitude to the crew.
Go ahead, Councilor Petrie.
Through your worship, the Deputy Mayor beat me to the punch. To Chief Bondi, I would like to thank you. After a 2-year absence, we haven't seen that in our community and everybody was gearing up for it. I tried to stay away, but I had to attend 3 nights. It got the best of me. So I wanted to go for a ride, but they wouldn't give me one. I would like to say thank you. You have a young support administration staff, so they seem to have picked up the ball where, you left off prior to COVID. It was well attended, very professional. And I can see it's leading up to now in the Christmas season with the good fellows. I can see that support you have from your staff. And I think you've got good things coming your way. Thank you.
Yes, and I want to extend it too, but I got to tell a little story because this was pretty funny. I really believe that moms and dads are just as enthused as the 6-year-olds going on a fire engine ride. And to prove my point, there was about a 7 or 8-year-old, and mom and dad were getting on one of the trucks and the father said to the son, he said, "Excuse me, I'm sitting in this seat," which was the captain's seat. Like you're a grown man arguing with a 7-year-old, to be in that front seat. So I started to chuckle. So I felt like going into the fire prevention officer's office and get one of those little red hats and give it to the dad so I could sit in the front. But it was amazing to see the numbers. It was like they were lined up past the sidewalk, in that. So to your point, Councilor Petrie, a lot of those young firefighters had never experienced that week. And but I also want to extend my thanks to the county for their EMS people that were there through St. Clair College, the students, the OPP, Enbridge was there, and also the CMC at the county who were there, as well. So it was well attended, and kudos. I think other municipalities have somewhat of a fire prevention week, but nothing like here. And so if you want to add anything, Chief, extend it to your staff, that we were very, very pleased and very impressed.
Yes, thank you all for the kind comments. It was really nice to see. It was almost like COVID never happened and we were back 3 years ago. I just also wanted to mention one of our local Tim Hortons donated coffee and donuts and hot chocolate for all 4 nights at both stations. So it was another big thanks to them and everyone else that came out to support. So thank you all.
Excellent. So I'm sure, Chief, you'll be sending out letters of thanks to all of the participants in that. Okay. Excellent. Any further new business? Go ahead, Councilor Houston.
Thank you, Your Worship. And this is a question maybe to the CAO or Mr. Hillman. Earlier tonight, we passed the bylaws for the additional residential units. Is that something now that will be incorporated through a quick permit process, or will it now require any additional applications online? I don't see anything online yet as we just passed it, but I'm just wondering now if anyone is interested, now that we've passed that bylaw, what the process will look like.
Mr. Hillman.
Thank you for that question. Actually, there will be no change in process. A full application for permit is required. We will be doing some in-servicing internally around how to navigate the process. It's slightly different, just in terms of the requirements are quite unique. Some of these will involve retrofitting of existing homes. Others will be additions onto homes, and others will be detached buildings. We are working on a guideline to make available to the public. These are relatively new in the Ontario context. Certainly here in the town, we've had a number come through. But from a building permit perspective, the same requirements that would be involved for a home are involved for these types of units. They, as you can appreciate, are a place where people will live and occupy space. So the requirements are quite stringent.
It's a very good point, Councilor Houston, to bring up, because I know I've been knocking on some doors, and I would say that there was quite a few questions about ARUs and when are they coming? I said, well, they are. I knew this was on the agenda, so I think to your point, you know, the more we can get it onto the website and so forth, and I like the idea of you know, kind of setting up a guideline, because I think there's going to be a lot of inquiries on that.
To that point, Mr. Mayor, we will work with the communications staff to make sure that there's some level of broadcasting of this material.
Excellent. Any further comments or on new business? Beg pardon? Oh, I didn't see him. Sorry. He kind of snuck up to the table. Yes, Mr. Anthony.
Yes, good evening, Mayor McNamara, members of council. Certainly, it's disappointing to have to bring this forward again this year, but we're starting to see a rise in vandalism at our outdoor washrooms once again. They're taking the soap containers off the walls, smashing the toilet and hand paper towel containers. They're plugging toilets, letting water flow onto the floors. And before we get to any worse damage that we started to see last year, we're going to take some action. And this is widespread across the community this year. It even includes the Weston Park, which we didn't see last year. So as of this week, what we will be doing is we will close the washrooms at Weston Park and put a washroom in place. I have talked to Councillor Jobin today. There is one large event that's coming up. We will open that the washrooms up for that event. And when that event's done, we will then winterize. St. Mary's Park right now is complete. There was no damage, but the programming is done. So we're going to winterize those washrooms and put them to bed. Optimus Park, where we saw the large majority of the damage last year, is once again starting. So we will be closing those washrooms. Last year, if you recall, we did have some substantial damage done inside, including garbage being lit on fire. We'll put a porta-john in place for the tennis courts so they can continue to use that facility during the fall time. Lacoste Park, Lakewood Park, and McAuliffe Park. What we will be doing is closing the washrooms at 6 o'clock. So a lot of the stuff seems to happen as the day goes on. The parks are still used quite a bit through the day. We will monitor. If damage continues to occur, we'll have to do the same there. We'll have to shut the washrooms down and bring porta-johns in to service those areas. We'll monitor them. We'll ensure that you know, we try to keep an eye out. We will be putting out a correspondence from the communications department later this week to notify the public and the media of what's going on. I can sadly say again, we're not the only community. Lakeshore's run into it, and I think they've closed a number of their outdoor washrooms, and some of the other communities are running into the same issues. It's certainly disturbing because those washrooms are meant for the youth, mid-aged and adults, as well as seniors. It seems that there's one age group that seems to be carrying on the issues. When our staff do see them gathering, they lock the washrooms, try to be preventive, but we don't have enough staff to be there. There are cameras in a few of the facilities, but obviously they're not in the areas where the damage is being done. So even though you can witness somebody coming out of the washrooms, there's no proof that anything has been done. So we're hoping that the message gets out again. We have a large number of users in all these facilities. We have a lot of adults that are coming and going at all times of the day. If they're seeing anything, we ask that they contact the police, you know, so that somebody can be dispatched, you know, that they're our best set of eyes and ears that are out there. So again, it's very sad to have to bring this forth, but it's something we have to take, a step to do to ensure that we don't have to incur further costs and damage.
You know, that's unacceptable behavior. I mean, we've had a lot of issues, over the years and that. And I'd like to see some communications with our communications department, also looking at going to Crime Stoppers, letting them know And, you know, we need more patrols like in the parks. You know, again, I've been adamant. I know Deputy Mayor and myself at Police Services Board, you know, asking for bike patrol, more foot patrol certainly in the parks and so forth. I know the camera piece is, you know, and I was thinking about that. I mean, obviously you can't have a camera in a stall, you know, and so forth, but over a sink where, you know, people washing their hands inside the building, if they're set up just there, you know, I mean, talk to our lawyers or whatever. Somehow we've got to find a way to discourage this type of behavior, because if the mobility of these young folks that are going into these buildings, it's probably the same ones that are going to Lakeshore and they're coming here and doing all this damage, you know, in the areas. And, you know, I mean, it's taxpayers' money to, you know, that are paying to repair those facilities. Those kids, you think the parents don't, you know, don't pay, you know, to fix that? They get their jollies so they can bust the toilet or, you know, do what they're doing. It's unconscionable. And I think the message got to be out that if they're caught, I mean, I'll tell you, like, let's do the running total. Somebody's going to pay on this, because it's ridiculous that every year we're penalizing law-abiding people that need those facilities, and we're shutting them down because, you know, we can't afford not to shut them down. It makes no sense at all for people to do that. And it's unacceptable behavior. And, you know, if they're caught, we're going to charge them. It's not going to be a slap on the wrist or whatever, but, you know, then we could sue the parents, because it's, you know, it's unconscionable. Councilor Tonio.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think you answered one of my questions. Obviously, we don't go through insurance, all this. This comes out of our budget that could go towards soccer fields and baseball diamonds and all that, but we have to use it to fix things instead of, we don't go through insurance, correct?
That's correct, because their deductible is much higher than what the damages are, but they are substantial.
Correct. Second thing to the CAO, in the past, when I was OPP, we had a program called Park Watch, and where you sent letters to the residents that abutted our parks and advising them what to do if they saw this different activities, what our curfews are, and just make them aware of the laws and how to report things as an observer from the back of the park, and help us and help the police do a better job. So maybe we can initiate that kind of thing with the OPP.
Through mayor to council, I have spoken about that based on the last time that you raised that, Councillor Tonio, and so they are kind of looking into what models might now exist of a program similar to that.
Thank you.
You know, I don't think a motion is needed here. I think it's more direction, the administration, do what you have to do, Mr. Anthony, to protect the property of the municipality. And but I think we need to work with our communications department and get the word out, and let the media know, and then and Crime Stoppers. Let's somebody wants to make a few dollars, you know, you can turn these people in, and hopefully they can, and you know, to deal with it, because this is unacceptable behavior at all. You can't, you know, this is, and it seems as the days are getting shorter, and so you know, the element of criminality comes out, you know, at that particular time. So I think it's you know, I'd say an hour before sunset, whatever, lock them up. And we need to protect the, you know, whatever's left of our property.
Thank you, Houston. Yeah, thank you, Worship. And through you, I have to agree with everything that's been said. But to your point, you know, having cameras in appropriate areas of the facilities, and I think of McAuliffe, where you know, the men's washroom, where the door is, and where the sinks are. If there was a camera that, you know, caught all of that area, I would think that we'd be able to catch a lot of that activity. Of course, if they're going to go in a stall and smash a toilet, that, you won't be able to get that on camera, but I would certainly be in favor of looking at that and putting cameras in appropriate areas where this activity is happening.
Yeah. I think we need to look at every opportunity to discourage their stupidity. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Thank you, Worship, and through you, Mr. Anthony, thank you very much. And again, sorry to hear this continuous issue. I'm just wondering, we have to be smarter. And I think there's a lot of mechanisms or ways to kind of look at this, which may, still fall in with the legalities of it. Also perhaps monitoring, in addition to perhaps video, kind of the acoustics as to what's going on. That may be something which, we can incorporate into the cameras. But I would encourage us to try to think smarter, because I not that we're not, I think we're doing, the very best we can, trying to be proactive. But as been said, it's really sad that the larger community has to suffer over, something that's kind of stupid and really doesn't need to take place. But I think if we can kind of think of maybe some novel ways to, all you have to do is catch one and then it'll stop. We all know that. One, I hate to say it, one has to be that example, but so please, I just encourage you, you're very creative, and I'm sure you have a lot of links that are also very creative as well. See if we can tap into those resources to get some interesting mechanisms to resolve this issue once and for all. Thank you.
All right, any further questions or comments? Any further new business? If not, then, confirmatory bylaw to confirm the proceedings of this meeting. Deputy Mayor Bichetti and Councillor Altnoff, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. Any notices of motion? Hearing none. Our next meeting will be Tuesday, November the 8th, 2022, 7 p.m. regular start. Okay, I don't have that here, but 27th of October.
Yes, starting at 4 p.m.
Okay, starting at 4. 27th October at 4. And no further business, then adjournment's in order. Councillor Tonio, Councillor Petrie, all in favor, opposed, that is carried. Thank you very much. Members of council, administration, those who are streaming from home, thank you. This meeting is now adjourned.